Welcome, folksy folks. Welcome to Fabric of Folklore podcast. I'm your hostess, Vanessa Y. Rogers, and this is the podcast where we unravel the mysteries of folklore. And I don't know about you, but I love quotes, and I found a really great quote for today. Alan Dundes is hailed by some as the most renowned folklorist of his time. And he said, as a folklorist, I have come to believe that no piece of folklore continues to be transmitted unless it means something, even if neither speaker nor the audience can articulate what that meaning might be. And I love this quote so much because I really feel like it gets at the heart of what this podcast is about, because we know deep down that our folk tales and our traditions and our rituals that we have as a culture have importance, but a lot of times we don't know what those meanings or significances are. And the reason this podcast exists is to figure that out, to discover what the meaning of our folklore is. Why do we tell fairy tales? What our jokes tell us about the larger culture? And do the chocolate covered strawberries that we eat at Valentine's have a deeper significance? We want to better understand who we are as a race of humans living together on this planet in sometimes drastically different cultures. What commonalities do we have? And what differences can we celebrate? So if that sounds like a podcast you are interested in following, make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you make sure that you get our notifications every week, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform like Apple or Spotify. So you get our notifications every week when a new episode drops. And if you're a longtime listener, make sure you give us a review, because that is so helpful for new listeners to find our show. We have a fantastic show for you today. Rebecca Heidt is a multifaceted LGBTQ plus writer of fantasy fiction acceptance series, which starts with the book The Beginning. Her passion lies in writing, painting, anthropology, history, spirituality, and nature. So our show is going to be about Rebecca's award-winning series, which required significant amounts of research into the world of mythology and folklore, which she incorporated into her writings. She'll be talking about what folklore she discovered in her research and her writing journey. So thanks so much for joining us, Rebecca.
Thanks for having me.
So walk us through your journey. Walk us through your journey of writing this book series.
It was, I really honestly started writing it when I was younger, but I paused for real life experience. As, like they were like, go into the workforce. And I'm like, I'm a creative. I don't want to do that. I want to create art and beauty and whatever and live in this fantasy world. And they're like, no. So I paused it, and pretty much what happened was a bit like when I was getting burnt out from the daily grind of life and corporate life, I sort of pulled out all of my stories again because I love writing stories. And so I went back to this one section I wrote when I was like 20, and then I started exploring that further. And so I was already exploring it, and then COVID happened and the quarantine happened, and then I lost a bunch of family members. And so my escape was the fantasy world. I grew up on Xena, I grew up on Buffy. I would imagine that Pegasus was real, and I would just fly around on Pegasus, and the world. And yeah, so that's where my mind always went to. So I translated all of the emotional trauma I've been dealing with and emotional pain into a story with mythology is everything anyone ever needed.
And I assume it was a cathartic experience.
Yeah. Yes, it was.
And so you had the idea, and then how did you start researching the mythology and the folklore that was going to go into it? Did you have some basis in it already from your background, or where did you get these ideas?
So I had the ideas about glowing eyes, and I really like the electric color blue a lot. There's something about it. And I don't know how to explain it. It's hard to, there's something captivating, a certain color green that's electric, and then a certain color blue that's electric. And it's just it captivates me every time. And so that was my that was always my thing, was whenever I had a like in my head, I had a story developing. She always had glowing blue something, always glowing blue eyes, glowing blue something. Like that was her signature thing. So I was like, okay, I should write this. And then Lost Girls came out, the sci-fi TV show, and like, you know, it's Faye and she has glowing blue eyes. I was like, well, I can't do that anymore because for obvious reasons. So I like had to switch it, you know, and so I went with green. I always wanted to do elemental. Like, I love nature. I've always been connected to nature. Like, I would be the 5-year-old talking to plants. Like, I would be the one, like, just like petting trees and like talking to bird eggs. And, you know, like, I was the weird kid, and I'm okay with that because I love that space for me. And it's such a happy space. Like, I felt the most peace in my life whenever I was just engaging with nature. So the nature was already there. So the mythology of it came very easily to me. So I was originally going to do Fae, but there's so much Fae out there. There's so much content about it. So then I was like, okay, what's an alternative? So it starts with one idea, and then I say, okay, how does that exist in the world now? And then I'll modify it according to my creativity or different ideas that come to my head. So it's they're nymphs with elements. And then I researched, which dove me into the nymph research, and that was like a
Okay,
whole
well,
lot.
can you define what a nymph is? Because it's different than a god or a goddess, right?
Yeah, they're usually helpers. So a nymph normally is a helper based off of like a specific element. So for example, Hera, the story is that Hera has a tree on Earth with golden apples, and she has specific nymphs. I can't remember what type they are. I'm assuming they're wood nymphs, to guard the tree and the apples, for example. So like they're specific to the area. So if it's like a desert nymph guarding an oasis or something like that, there would be desert nymphs, like something connected to Earth but relating to desert. Um, there were so many. There were so many of them. Like for animals that communicate with animals, like vines, and there's storms, and there's like so many different. Like they just protect nature. They protect nature.
And are the nymphs that you're talking about, are they specifically Greek nymphs, or are there nymphs found in other mythologies as well?
I remember reading there was other nymphs in other mythology. Mostly it's Greek and Roman, honestly, because like the Nords don't really have nymphs, but everyone has like helpers. Like they're the helpers. You know what I mean? Like Odin has the birds. Freya has cats. She's, you know, so I mean they're not. I think it's culture related in literally that sense, but they're still helpers everywhere in every culture. Yeah.
And are the helpers, are they loyal to their nature, or are they loyal to the gods and goddesses that, I guess, spawned them or created them?
Dub them, knight them. Yeah. So my understanding is they're loyal to their mentor. So like even though there's a fire nymph, I think from what I remember, light the light nymph is the rarest one, and it's harder to catch. It's either that or the fire one. I can't quite remember, but it's one of those. But it's like I distinctly remember bright white light is the rarest, but it exists. Like it's like the unicorn of the nymph world. But they're here for a reason. Like, and I'm assuming it has to do with to bring light to darkness when, you know, darkest hour. You know, like something relating to that. And even though it's a fire nymph's nature to light fires and light stuff on fires, but that's not the purpose. So like the nymphs are aligned with their purpose, not necessarily like they're mischievous sometimes because they get bored. I mean, if you were here forever, wouldn't you be bored a little bit? I mean,
Yeah.
But like it's about balance.
When you're describing them, they sound very similar to fairies in some instances. Do you see a relationship between nymphs and fairies?
I do. Yeah, I definitely feel like there's a connection to, but they're like bigger than like fairies are like, they're really, really tiny. Like usually, keyword there is usually, like in the world, like I've seen, well, I don't know if I want to say that, but like I've seen fairies and they're like literally like a couple of inches. You know what I mean? And
Mm,
yeah, so fairies in like mythology speaking, like they can be human beings, like changelings, um,
mhm,
like actual people, but they're also like Tinkerbell, you know what I mean?
mhm, mhm. But fairies have that connection to nature. Some fairies have
Yeah.
that connection to nature as well, and some fairies have a protection of the land type
Yes.
connection, right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and one of the things that you, when we were having our conversation before we started this one, you said that one of the things that really struck you was that there are truths in mythology. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think that just like any story comes, like our first history is from oral history because writing didn't exist then, so it was all by stories. Well, they have to originate from somewhere, and the Native American, they have these stories about how the sky existed, and there's this, or turtles. They have stories for everything because that's how they would explain everything.
Mhm.
Um, but I think there's truth in that because they exist in other cultures. So if you think about it, the Romans and the Greeks, the Romans sort of went everywhere. And then the Celtics went, Romans went into the Celtic. So all the stories are connected through culture or history some kind of way. But
Mhm.
there are some that have never met each other across the world on completely opposite ends, and they're similar. So for the
Mhm.
example, I'm going to go to the tree life for this one because it's the easiest one to do. some some people, some cultures like the Mayan, the Aztec, and then so many. It just keeps going. Like like oh my gosh, I can't remember what they're called. Doesn't matter. Moving on. So so Aztec and the Mayans, and then all the other cultures, even in Hinduism, Buddhist, like Judaism, Christianity, like all of them have something resembling a tree of some kind. It's not identical to the same tree. They all have different versions of it. But some of them call the tree of life, some of them call it tree of knowledge. They're essentially the same thing, but um, I don't think it's our place to like fight which one's correct. Like no one's correct. I think we're all correct. Like it's
Uh-huh.
like why would the tree exist if it wasn't true? If it didn't, the belief in something makes it real, and I think that's like imperative for mythology. So if someone has, so for example, the goddess Aset in Egypt was renamed in Greece Isis. The same
Mhm.
one, the same person. Like the connection is there. It's all about connection. And
Mhm.
I think that like fighting over who, again, who's right, who's wrong is the wrong way to do it. I think we should marvel at the fact that these stories can not only exist through time, but also through culture and around the world in the same capacity.
Mhm. Yeah. And to you, what does it mean that there are parallel stories in different cultures that probably didn't even, you know, cross over? What does that say to you, that there's like a deeper truth? That's why is it important for us to acknowledge that there's these connections?
Because there's unity in them. We're the same, so we get compassion, humanity, and a feeling of familiarity with different people that look different from us from the similarities. So if I go over to someone who I've never like engaged in their culture before and I started talking about tree of life or something, they would like, oh yeah, in our store we have this. That's an immediate point where we can get along.
Mhm.
So that is the point where friendship comes from. That's where unity comes from. That's where that's why
Mm.
it's important to
Mhm.
remember, like, it's the humanity of it. So, for example, a lot of the cultures would fight against each other because they thought they were better. I mean, it's still happening. They thought they were better than the others, but they made the same pottery out of clay. Like they made like it's those cultural sames that
Mm.
we should have looked beyond.
Mhm. So tell us a little bit about your research process. Like how do you do your research?
So what I do is when I have an idea, I'll Google it, but then I will Google it different ways to see if the same information comes up. So I'll look
Mhm.
for valid websites, like .org, or like Sweden. I spent a lot of time on the Swedish website, so like actual government websites, actual
Mhm.
legit places. And I will find the information as many times as humanly possible. So I have to find the info at least 4 to 5 times in different sites for me to consist that it is more of the valid type, because blogs
Mhm.
are bots, So I
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm very, very thorough. Like I even reached out to the Swedish Swedish like community, and I was like, "Can you clarify? Can you clarify this for me, please?"
Yeah. Yeah. And do you fall I'm sure you fall down lots of rabbit holes. Did you fall any particularly interesting rabbit holes that you fell
Yeah,
down?
because there's so many gods and goddesses out there, like Celtic and just and I don't know them all. So as soon as I see a name, like I'll see, like I saw Frey and Freya because they're twins, and then there was another one. There was like Suna and Manny, and they're twins. And I was like, who are these people? And then I would Google them, and then it would, and then it would be like, this is who they are. And then the daughter and the son of blah blah blah. And then like, who are these people?
Yeah.
it was
Mhm.
it was it was pretty crazy. So I
Mhm.
started in Roman with Flora.
Mm.
I googled goddesses of spring, flowers, love, that kind of stuff, like the
Mhm.
lovey feelings. And I
Mhm.
started with Flora because I wanted someone else besides Aphrodite, because we all know Aphrodite. And then I was all like, and then it listed other people, and then I just followed it.
Yeah. So tell us about Flora. Who is Flora and what was she uh, in charge of? How is she different or similar to
Yeah.
Aphrodite?
So Flora is a Roman goddess. She's in charge of spring. So the whole idea is Flora, like flower. So my
Mhm.
big thing is flowers. I love flowers because they're natural beauty. They bring sweet smell. Like there's really nothing negative about it except maybe the pollen, but that's just science. So, but like, so she's the Roman goddess of spring, flowers, beauty, love, and I didn't personally ever hear a lot about her.
Mhm.
So when I did research for book 3 in the Greyfriars Abbey, there was a blogger who was suggesting that some of it was in part for Flora, and I was like, well, who is this? Who is this person?
Mhm.
So she's very um really, she seems very relaxed. Like she's very calm, and like, so Aphrodite is hold on one second. Here, go. Sorry, it's my dog.
We have lots of pets that come in on our podcast.
She's not. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, sorry about that. So Aphrodite is really out there. She she's very promiscuous. She's very into love and feeling, and following where that belongs. And rose is her color, sand, seashells, that kind of thing. And Flora is a version of that, but not as um outgoing. Like she's soft.
Mhm.
She's the softer version of Aphrodite.
Mm.
The softer
And
version.
are they from different mythologies?
Yeah, so Roman, and then Aphrodite is Greek. Yeah, Aphrodite. So she's the goddess of love and I don't want to say compassion, because I mean love is compassion, but she's usually seen as a very out there, more promiscuous. She likes to kiss a lot of people, that kind of thing.
She loves love.
She loves love. Yeah, boys and girls, I'll tell you what. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then I also found like Freya, who is also a version of promiscuous, and then I just went from there.
Okay, so let's go through a little bit of your book. So tell us a little bit about what the idea behind your acceptance series is, and then we can look at the different folklore mythologies that you found for each of the books.
Sure. So, my acceptance series is sort of unlocking an emotional and mental journey to be a better version of ourselves because of the way the world has made us all sort of dissociate from people and events in life. So it's my way of, in a fantasy fiction setting, sort of reminding people that it's okay to feel these feelings, and it's like an emotional journey of growth. How do you
Mm,
heal the trauma? How do you heal, the stuff you can't really deal with, but you sort of should deal with it so you can be a better person?
mhm,
Um, that's at the base of the story. That's what it is, and then it's connected to my experience and my research of mythology along the way because I've in like the darkest moments of my time, I would like stare at a flame of a candle and like just ask myself a bunch of questions about like history and mythology and like what they did with it. And I mean, it was like that's a rabbit hole in itself, honestly.
mhm,
So it was what I experienced and then mythology behind it as well.
mhm, mhm. And so, in the first one, the is called the beginning book.
Yes, the
Okay.
beginning.
What are some of the elements that you incorporated?
So acceptance to the beginning is um it's the tip of the iceberg for the mythology world. It's to like ease the readers into it before we got to book two and it got all crazy because I didn't want to get all crazy at first. So I lead up to her background and her life and her family, and then her discovery of her abilities, which is well, spoil this whole thing's a spoiler, so I guess that's fine. uh, which is green fire, which is connected to like it's a hereditary pass on from like family members.
Mhm,
So hers is so then I bring up that and her dealing with it afterwards, and so that's the first foreshadowing that there's a major mythology in it, and then book two is where you really jump headfirst into all that.
mhm. And so, in your notes to me, you said that there were non-binary gods and goddesses.
Yeah.
Which ones are you referring to?
So I didn't write them in my book, but I know that they exist, and I am probably going to bring it in later in my fourth book, which I haven't written yet. But
Mhm,
Dionysus um, is a big one known, and it's crazy because a lot of people you see Dionysus in TV shows and stuff, but in actual history and mythology, it says that Dionysus is like both identifies both female and male. So
mm,
it's because Dionysus is the party god.
mhm, mhm.
I mean,
He's the
that's
god of wine and
what,
party.
yeah,
Uh,
desire, yeah. 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 So one is that Loki. So again, Loki is predominantly male, but also he um can identify sometimes as female. So like it changes. And the question is who came first, which information is correct? I mean, no one knows. It's like oral
Mm.
history. Like, where did it come
Mhm.
from? You know what
Mhm. And what surprised you in your research for book number 1?
I mean? So I wrote green flames. Originally it was going to be blue, but I changed it away from blue. So I did green flames, and obviously in the world there's no actual green flames, and I researched it very intensely. Um, and I realized it was connection to the Northern Lights,
Mm.
because whenever I see the Northern Lights, I feel like it's green flames in the sky, like it's
Mm.
almost like the universe or the gods were talking to us through green light in the sky or something like that. So like that's, I sort of connected it with that, and that's actually where I got the idea. That thought actually gave me the idea of connecting her and her family specifically to like a communicator or an oracle. So that's where that idea was born, was
Mm.
like a seer or something like that. Yeah. So I mean, it all rolls together in some way.
Mhm. And then you said in the book there's something about dream connections. Is that what you're talking about with
Yes.
her being a connector? And what does
Yeah.
that look like?
So what that looks like is her ability to latch when she feels like she means something specific. So for example, the main character Selena was taught to sort of hide herself. Oh, I should have added, she's bisexual to
Okay.
LGBT. Sorry, I
Mhm.
should have said that. So
Is this modern times?
yes,
Okay.
yeah, it's urban fantasy fiction. Mhm.
Okay.
Stockholm, Sweden specifically. Yeah. So it's not about her sexuality at all. She's just living her life in that community, in the world and stuff like that. So the issue is that she's trying to hide her ability from people trying to find her and essentially kill her in a way. Like get
Mhm.
information and kill her. So she has to hide her abilities and all of this power to save herself, but she didn't know at the time. Her mentor taught her, but so it builds up all of this like lack of connection to other humans. So when you feel so strongly, or she feels so strongly about wanting to connect to someone, it's almost like in your sleep you connect. So that's what she did. She ended up connecting to somebody else on a mental and emotional level that she didn't quite understand. And so
Mm.
that connection was like they could talk to each other, they can touch each other, they can interact with each other in their dreams until
Mm.
she says, okay, no, I've had enough. But when you're looking for someone, so for example, in mythology, when you want to get a message to, whenever like the story wants to get a message to like a god or goddess bad enough, and you go to the statue and you're like, oh, I need a sign. Their sign comes in dreams, so they come and connect with you in the dreams, and they're like,
Mm. Mhm.
here's your message, here's the riddle, you figure it out. So that's pretty
Mhm.
much like, so she connected with this person and she didn't know anything about it, and it was like, okay, you figure it out.
Mhm.
So the book is her figuring it out.
Yeah. So you see this in Greek, like with Greek oracles, and do you see it anywhere else?
um so when it comes to seers, there's one in Celtic. um I'm going to say the name wrong, and I'm so sorry. Ain, I think it's called. It's Aine. I don't know how to say that.
Mhm.
But and then in Norse, that Freya is the seer of the future. Odin
Mm.
is the all-seeing father, so he sees everything happening at all times around the world. So
Mhm.
so it's the goddesses. Sorry, the god and goddesses that have that ability to see have to explain it to people. So there's usually a priestess, or sometimes they like to throw in a random like a random virgin in there, and they're like, okay, now you're stuck in this thing, and they give them like psychedelics and then make them go to that other plane. Yeah, something that's the oracle by force, but there's also
Yeah.
like the maiden, the mother, and the crone. So sometimes in Greek there's the three, the past, the future, the present, and I mean it's literally everywhere.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
literally everywhere. Everyone has, so the Egypts had the priests, and they used things to communicate how they do, and I mean everyone has their own version.
And why do you feel like we have those versions of dream connectors or oracles or seers? Why would that be important for cultures, do you think?
I think it's a way to hope. Honestly, I think it's, if you think the world as it is exists just alone like this, the world sucks. I mean, let's be frank. We sort of messed it up. So I think I actually did a paper when I was younger in college about the belief in a symbol, a belief in an idea. And it's not necessarily the symbol itself or whatever you're believing in. It's the power behind the belief that gives something power. So the example I gave in my paper was a lollipop. If I thought this was a magical lollipop and I believed it would be. So I think the connections we have with dreams, and I know some people will say like astral projecting in dreams or prolific dreams, or and I think it's just, we need something to believe in beyond what we're going through.
Because if it's just this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm gonna share a story. So when I was in quarantine and during COVID, and I lost 4 family members.
I'm so sorry.
I know, it's very unfortunate. Thank you. It's not easy. Like, talk about dissociation. Like, that's it. Like, honestly. Yeah. So when I was like just bombarded with just all of this bad stuff, and I literally was sitting in my bed listening to music, and I'm like, is this what life's about? Like, is this really what we're here to do? We just suffer and die and plague and like have to worry about bills all the time. Like, this sucks. Like, why did I choose to be here? And then so the answer I got was, this is like the start, quarantine is the start of a rise, like us to go above all of the din that's happening from like the day to day, but it's going to take a lot of effort. So I mean, that I believe in that connection to gods and goddesses giving an answer like that. It's the dream connection, that kind of thing. So I mean, that gave me the motivation to move on with the series. So there's something in it.
Yeah. Okay, so then you moved on to book number 2. Tell us a little bit about that one.
Sure. So the reality is, it's exactly how it sounds. So the beginning is when you have an idea or feeling, and it's just a spark in your mind and your body, and you want to move it forward, and you're like, yeah, I can do this. That's the beginning. So the reality is the step moving into making it happen. So the reality of book 2 is it's crazy. So book 2 is like literally her just being thrown into this new leadership role. She's going to be in charge of, again, spoiler alert, a rebellion. And she's like mid-20s. She has no idea what's going on. She's been sheltered her whole life. She's fallen in love with this girl who's like breaking her heart over and over again, and she's like trying to pull this community together, and she's like trying to learn her abilities, but that's not working. And so it's like, she's like, this sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first half of the book is her dealing with that. And then the second half and you learn about more abilities coming in from different lands, like water, um, earth, and then the vines, like plants, and like storm, air, like they start coming in, telekinesis in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And like you start learning more about other people around the world in this community. And then she connects with her family oracle candle because she didn't know how to do that. And then she talks to her ancestor and it starts making a little bit more sense. And then
Mm.
she learns about the tree of life. And then she learns about the history. Why is there a rebellion right now? Why is there war? Yeah, she learns a lot. So it helps her grow mentally, but it also is like a lot for any human being.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned the tree of life really comes into this one. So
Yeah.
talk to us about the different versions of a tree of life. And you said sometimes it's called the tree of knowledge. Tell us about the tree of life and the tree of knowledge and where we find it around the world.
So the tree of life is normally understood as the connection between like above and below. So in some books,
Mm-hmm.
it's heaven or hell, if you will, heaven or hell, if
Yeah.
you believe in that. Or it's just connection to the underworld and I don't know, the non-underworld, whatever that is considered. I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
say heaven, but it's like Mount Olympus, or something, Valhalla or something like that.
Yeah.
And other aspects of culture, it's the thing holding up the sky. They're the trees holding up the sky. So in Aztec and Mayan religion, they planted a type of tree specifically they thought was considered a tree of life or tree of knowledge into
Mm.
four corners of their territory to hold up, like to make sure nothing fell on them and keep them safe. There's other religions that thought that there's a tree branch in every single direction, a point of a compass, and there's every single color known or not known on those branches. So it's essentially a color wheel. That was the Mayans.
Mm.
Yeah, I was like, so they that's where I pulled from, is that idea. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's another story about how the tree of life is the connection between life, is like it's the essence of life itself, like it's the heartbeat of
Mm-hmm.
living. And then when we pass away, it's the connection to reborn, like the reborn of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like everything. Some of them are plentiful with leaves, some of them are barren and a bunch of branches going out, and some of them are they look like, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's like, I don't know, and it's like round. So like they're different in size, different in shape, but they all generally have the same idea. There's a connect, like it goes with connection, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
life, whether it's to a different world, whether it's like holding things up with its strength and its roots and stuff. It's all about strength in life, honestly.
Mm. Who calls it the tree of knowledge?
I saw it 3 times. I saw it less than life.
Right.
I can't quite remember the specific which one it was.
Mm-hmm.
Can't remember.
Do you remember what knowledge that those cultures were trying to get from the tree? Was it did it play the role of like an oracle if it was called tree of knowledge?
Yeah, so like so for example, I want to say Greek, if I remember correctly, the one, that story I told you about Hera and the golden apple.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully I'm not mixing it up because Lord knows so many stories. From what I remember, my brain is telling me. that like that's knowledge. The apple was knowledge, so they were protecting people from not getting all of that knowledge at once. So the fruits that it would bear like the ultimate knowledge of, I don't know, I don't want to say the universe because no brain can handle that. So just vastness, I guess. Yeah. So it usually, the knowledge part is connected to the fruit it bears. So I think that the tree specific in cultures that have fruits, they're like, okay, that's the knowledge.
Like in the Bible with the fruit, the apple from the tree.
Exactly.
The tree of knowledge.
Yeah.
Very cool. Any other significant folklore in that book? In reality?
I did some oracle candle to the ancestor. I had her relive her ancestor's life in ancient Egypt. I literally had her travel for time to Egypt so she can relive the event that caused the start of all of this. So the biggest thing, well, I can talk about that in the book 3. So never mind. You can go.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and tell us. We'll move on to book number 3. Go ahead and tell us.
Okay. Okay, so the idea behind book 3 is that a lot of bad things happened at the end of book 2, like good stuff and bad stuff. She helped to reunite the community. They're sort of banding together. So now she's the majority and he's the minority, like the villain is the minority. Before it was opposite. But she lost her way a little bit because of some family trauma that happened. And she lost her connection to the oracle candle. She lost her connection to the tree of life, tree of knowledge, because she had so much hate and vengeful feelings and couldn't really process correctly. So she lost that connection that she had before. So the biggest thing I want people to remember is that peacefulness, inner peacefulness, and connections to things that we enjoy and love and stuff are ever flowing. Like it's always back and forth. Once you have it, it might disappear. Just like there was a story about Hercules and he lost his strength. It's the Disney movie. He lost his strength and then it came back. So like things are not always consistent, just based on the choices or the thoughts we have. So that's book 3. So I am reminding people that the tree of knowledge and tree of life and anything mythology relating is always available for us if we want it, but want it in the correct capacity. So that's the story behind book 3 is the tree wouldn't let her in because she was revengeful. You can only access information if you are not, I don't want to say pure heart, but like good intentions. Because I hate pure heart. I hate that.
Why do you hate that phrase?
Because the human existence is back and forth. Like no one's gonna be pure heart because it's so back and forth. Like sometimes I get really angry over the dumbest things and like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, that doesn't. So pure heart, I think, means I want this information so I can help and better other people out of compassion. I want to make their life easier. I want to ease their pain. But if someone says I want to ease their pain and like by getting rid of their whole community, that's not the same thing. So there's a very fine line. And so the idea is that the tree, and I'm going to talk about it more in book 4, is the tree of knowledge knows if you say something, I want to help this community by enslaving. So that part you don't say, it knows. So like what is in your heart? Because your mouth can say whatever it wants, but what is in your heart? And that's what she has to go through to reconnect with it. And she does that through her dream connection. So she connects to the tree to work through all of this stuff, and eventually she does get to connect with it again.
So like intensive therapy sessions with the
Yeah.
tree.
In 5 words or less, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she's the leader. You know, in the book,
Mhm.
she's the leader. So who's the leader without? You can't help other people if you can't help yourself.
Mhm. Right.
Honestly, you know, like.
And you said that in book number 3, you had to do a significant amount of research about an abbey that is found in Ystad, Sweden. Is that how you say it?
Yes, Dad.
Uh-huh. So
Yeah.
tell us about this abbey and the history and why it interested you.
Yeah. When I first researched where I wanted to have it in Sweden, I like Google Maps. I calculated how far the drive was first, and I said, okay, what's the more populated area that would make sense for someone to be hidden in, and would be enough things to do that I can occupy the story. So it was like I started there, and then I chose the town, and I went into it, and I said, okay, what kind of place does there exist in this town that I can like put it? So it took me a while to figure out where I want to put the actual story, and I figured out the Greyfriars Abbey because they adapted through time so well. They started as a friar, and then they changed into a library, and then they changed into a distillery, and then like a museum. Yeah, I know, right? Just like it's their adaptability that I was drawn to.
So it's no longer currently a monastery or a friar or has any religious affiliations, or does it still?
So it's a museum that goes over the religious aspects of I don't know. They still use the church, the abbey. I meant to say that earlier. So the abbey is still in
Oh,
use today.
oh, okay.
And so they like obviously the structures and all the things aren't there anymore, like not all of them. So they have like pictures. I like the simplicity of it. It's beautiful brick archways, simple glass, no stained glass. Like, you know, the churches all have stained glass and there's a bunch of stuff and adornments. It was just so simple. It was so simple and beautiful. And I found a lot of, found it rather beautiful. Like it just found a lot of beauty in it. So then in their yard, specifically, this is why I chose it. They have wildflowers. They have a ton of roses, and they have this outside like archway with a little like bird bath or some kind of water thing. I don't know what to call it. It's like it holds water. I don't know in the middle of it, and they have a peonies garden. I mean, it's absolutely breathtaking. So the grounds are really what got me, and that's why I was researching flora and the flowers. And it was the flowers.
The flowers. Yes. It's one of the oldest abbeys, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's what was it, 12th or 13th century? Yeah. There's there's another church, Saint Saint Mary. Again, my brain is like blah blah. So like there's another church down the road from it where the town guard is, the tower guard sits, and he blows like the horn. And so I did a lot of research on that. Originally, I thought they were the same, and they're not the same. Because the internet was making me believe they was the same, and it's not the same. They're two different things. So they're in the same 12th, 13th century. Both same idea with the archways and everything like that. But the church that the tower guard is in has a little bit more adornment to it, a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more decoration, because they're different technically religions,
Mm-hmm.
which is fascinating, absolutely
Mm-hmm.
fascinating. And like they protected, and they still protect the town from fires or like
Mm-hmm.
harm in any kind of way. And, like they still have a town guard, like they still have a tower guard.
Interesting. Huh. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
You also said that Midsummer, they have a Midsummer Day celebration. Is that the
Yeah,
same as like a summer solstice, or
it
what is
is.
that?
Yeah. So it's actually Sweden. It's in Sweden. It's their national holiday unofficially.
Oh,
They're, I guess, trying to make it officially their holiday, but the whole entire town stops in Ystad specifically, but in general, Sweden. I mean, they celebrate. It's Sweden's holiday, but in Ystad specifically, the whole
uh-huh.
town stops and they have a celebration, and it's a celebration of feast. It's food. It's about spring and summer. It's about flowers. It's about love. It's about happiness. It's music. Um, and they have the maypole there. So technically, May 1st is the maypole day, but in Sweden, the Maple Day is Midsummer.
Right.
Right,
Well,
yeah.
the maypole is in different celebrations as well. I had a guest who talked about the Matachinas. They're religious dancers from like Spain and Mexico, and they do these dances. But in
Hmm.
some of their celebrations, they have a maypole as well, which I thought was didn't really seem to fit. But I think that maypoles are found in other places as well.
They're absolutely, and that's another connection too. There's completely different societies that never talk to each other. Well, that I know of. You
Yeah.
mean like, so they exist. It exists for a reason, but it's the joy, it's the festivities, and that's behind it. And a
Hmm.
lot of these things, there's joy and festivities. Let everybody have their joy and festivities for real.
Yeah.
Let everybody be for real.
And so this Midsummer's Day, is that the one that's connected to Freya?
Yeah, so it's actually connected to a couple of different people. Freya she's harvest. She's a goddess of one of the people of harvest, because like her and her brother are twins. And
Hmm.
June, it's in June, so it's a Gemini. And yeah, so Freya, and then there's another one I saw was Litha,
Hmm.
Litha. I know less about her because I'm a huge Freya fan. So I'm like, I love Freya so much. And then, but it is connected to not just her, but like a couple of them because of the harvest, the flowers, and they wear the crown of flowers around their head. Like you see that on their actual like government website. Um, they tell you what kind of food. It's like fish, herring, and it's salmon, and there's breads, and they love strawberries. Yeah.
Mm. And so, do they in today's celebration? Do they still recognize Freya, or is she not really a part of the celebrations?
That is a great question. I'm not exactly sure because I
Mm.
was asking questions to the Grey Friar and not the Historian Society of
Hmm.
Ystad specifically. But I did see in their website for like for Sweden, like the government mentioned like Freya specifically. So I think there's a attachment to it.
Okay. And then, so you in your series you have 3 books, but you have a 4th one that you're working on currently.
Correct. Yeah.
And what mythology is coming up in that one?
I'm going to have the main character Selena go to the Tree of Life in person. So like they've all been visions or mental connections. Like I'm going to physically have her go there. And then I'm also going to have some of these gods and goddesses come more to life. Like I'm going to actually have them exist. And the question is I'm going to have, because I really want to make a side story. Like I really want to make a comic of that, the god and goddesses of myth, so bad. And I think I'm going to do that. So I want to do them justice. But I also don't want them to take up the whole story because they're going to have their own story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because they, you know, mythology can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what's next for you? So you have this book, and you said you're working on a movie as well. Is it on this book series?
Yeah, so I'm taking the Acceptance book series and it's being transformed into a feature film franchise. So in the end, it's going to be 4 to 5 movies, most likely 5 because I'm going to take my time with them. And I'm halfway through the first one, which is called it's called Secrets of the Warrior. If I remember the title, that would be great. Secrets of the Warrior. And I'm writing, it's already written, script is done. I'm directing it and I'm going to produce it. And I'm producing it with Sir Marco Robinson, who is the producer of the #2 Netflix USA hit Legacy of Lies and Undisputed films from UK. So we are in this together.
Cool. Well, that's exciting. When should we look for the first movie? Will it be a few years from now?
My estimation is 2025. My guess is we're gonna be. I haven't started filming yet, but I'm getting the locations together. I'm talking to the people. I'm talking to actors. I already have music for musicians already done. Like I'm like ready to go. I just like I'm working on funding, so I'm gonna start crowdfunding, and with for investors and like the public to help us make this film happen for LGBT representation and fantasy fiction world essentially. So that's going to be coming probably in March. I don't know when you're hearing this.
I don't either. Probably March. Probably March. But yeah, so we'll add links up to your website, and then you have a link tree, I think, that will probably have these types of connections for what is coming up for you. So if people are interested in purchasing your book series and following your directing journey, they can definitely follow you there. Yeah. Well, do you feel like we missed anything?
We talked about a lot. I mean, when I talk about mythology, it's just like, it's like, wow, I love it. I love mythology. Yeah. I will just, I'm gonna, in the link tree, there is a Patreon website that people can follow along. I'm writing, it's more of a blog that I'm using, and they can follow. It's free, or you can subscribe to it for extra content. So I'm writing like my thoughts and my frustration and what I'm dealing with like taxes, hate taxes, and like nonprofits, and like it's really getting in there. So that's where I'm putting all that in.
Cool. Well, I'm sure there were going to be people who are really interested in this project because it sounds very fun. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Rebecca, and sharing your research journey.
Thank you for putting up with me.
And thank you, folksy folks, for coming on this fun fantasy fiction mythology intertwined journey with us. All of the show notes will include Rebecca's links on our website, www.fabricoffolklore.com. So you can find her links there and find out more about what she is up to. And we want to continue that conversation with you. We encourage you to connect with us on social media. We have a Facebook group and a Facebook page, and we like to ask questions on there and have people comment their thoughts. So what surprised you today? What did you learn anything? What mythology really speaks to you? Are you using mythology in your own writing journey or your own movie making journey? Tell us about what mythology you're discovering in your own lives today. You can comment on our YouTube channel. We're on Instagram. We're also sometimes on Twitter and on LinkedIn, so you can look for us there. And like I said before, make sure you're subscribing so you get notifications every week. And but I lost my train of thought. Thank you for listening to Fabric of Folklore. This is Vanessa Rogers, and until next time, keep the folk alive.